Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Dojo Live. Today is Tuesday, March 8th, 2022. This is Tulio Surgusa broadcasting from Southern California. Joining me is Kim Lantis in Hermosillo, Mexico. Hi, Kim. Welcome back.
Hello.
And we have Brian Price, who's the CEO at Kion, who's joining us this afternoon from Washington, D.C. area. Welcome to the show. Good to have you with us, Brian.
Hi, Tulio. Thanks for having me. Really excited to be here.
So today we're going to talk about the cloud. There's a lot of conversation about the cloud, but the title of today's conversation, it makes me feel all warm and tingly inside. Embrace the cloud, embracing the cloud, like give the cloud a big hug. But before we go into that topic and see what we can learn today and what we can unpack, let's get to know our guest a little bit. Brian, if you could please introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about you, and then we'll dig in and see what Kion's all about. Again, welcome to the show.
No, and so really excited to be here. So I'm Brian Price, CEO and co-founder here at Kion. So my personal background, I started out hands-on keyboard software engineer in my early career. Worked at a number of large government contractors. Got a chance to work in a number of variety of just different projects and programs, ranging from cyber risk management to biometrics. And then probably about 2012, got exposed to this thing called the cloud. It was very early days. I got a chance to work with AWS at the time and saw some of those challenges that just existed then, and really kind of exist still today. So after working for a number of large companies, I made the move to start working for a few smaller businesses. Got a chance to work for a cyber company, and then actually a former colleague of mine that I work with at Booz Allen gave me a call and said, "Hey, we get this opportunity where we're working with some really cool customers. They're looking to scale and grow their cloud to fairly large size at the time, going back to that 2016, where they're looking 20-30,000 users, being able to have all kind of self-provision, self-service access to the cloud, and they were looking for really an opportunity to be able to provide a more holistic solution. And so I got a chance to make that move, and we'll get into probably next how Kion was born, but that's a little bit of my background, and now in my role, lead a lot of different things here at our 50 plus person company.
Nice. Well, thank you for introducing yourself, giving us a little bit of your background. Tell us what Kion's all about. What gave birth to this idea, that aha moment? Let's do this. What do you guys do?
Yeah, so Kion, we are a cloud enablement platform. So what that really means, it goes beyond just cloud management and cloud governance. So really our kind of core three areas that we focus around is automation, orchestration, financial management, and security and compliance automation. And all of that really we put together in a single platform that helps to bring the enterprise to the cloud, enabling their people and empowering really growth and innovation. What kind of led to this idea was, again, going back to that time frame around 2016. We worked as actually a part of a company that primarily was doing professional services. And in a role as a systems integrator, we were looking for some solutions to really kind of bring together to create that experience. And what we found was in the market, there were a lot of tools that told you problems, but very few tools actually gave you, here is automation to solve those, right? Cloud resources scale wonderfully, right? People don't. And the reality is that, for an organization to truly embrace cloud at scale, you have to have approaches and automation to really make that happen. So,
Mm-hmm.
we
Mm-hmm.
saw that gap in the market. We, had a choice. We worked very closely then, as we do now, with Amazon Web Services, AWS. Learned a lot about how they manage their cloud internally. We took a lot of best practices that has since been kind of rolled out into a number of different guides, and then kind of embodied that into what at the time was a product called Cloud Tamer, and then last year in November we recently rebranded as Kion. So it's been a cool journey. We were a part, I mentioned, of a professional services company, and in 2018 spun that out into its own separate company with 6 people, and have been on the rocket ship ever since. So.
That's a conversation all in itself to see how that process went. Let's see what we can unpack. Kim, if you don't mind, kick off the conversation with the topic and the theme we're going to be discussing today.
Of course, I don't mind one bit. Thank you for joining us today, Brian. So today's topic, as chosen by you, is embracing the cloud. There's Sansa, if you can hear barking. Specifically, how can companies avoid inefficiencies and mistakes in the cloud to achieve better control? So my perspective of your topic of choice here, embracing the cloud, is that the cloud's not going anywhere, right? It's here to stay. So whether you like it or not, you've got to adapt. You have to embrace that. But what specifically are these inefficiencies or the common mistakes that companies are making, and how can we fix those?
Yeah, and Kim, just great question. One of the things that I would say we see, and we work with a range of organizations from, Series A, B startups all the way to large enterprises like Verizon and Indeed, is that, at the end of the day, the cloud is not just a place where your data and applications are hosted. The cloud is really a culture that you have to build inside of your organization. And I think that's one of the first foundational elements that you have to start to unpack inside of most organizations' use of the cloud, right? So when you start to think about where inefficiencies exist, if you treat every cloud provider, AWS and Microsoft Azure and Google Cloud, as the same, right? You're kind of reducing functionality down to basic storage, networking, compute. You really are diminishing the value that those providers offer. There's some unique analytics services, let's just say, as for example, inside of Google, and you want to couple that with some awesome reporting tools like Power BI and Azure, and different parts of your organization probably have expertise in different areas. So, there's a lot of organizations that still are a little hesitant on giving choice to their teams and giving them the ability to be able to set that up in a way that also is controlled, but yet also flexible. And that model, and it's such a hard balance, right? But that model is so critically important, because the last thing that you want to do is also take traditional IT, approaches to the way that you provision a cloud resources, where it's a ticket process from one team to the next team to the next team, and you take that and you just kind of apply it into the cloud, where self-service is paramount, where scalability is paramount. You have to rethink that experience, and that's really one of the key, I would say, things that at its cornerstone is where we help a lot of customers with that automation that brings that together.
It makes a lot of sense. I like this idea of embedding this in your culture and taking full advantage of what's available to you. It actually reminds me of a past show that we had. I think it was one of the very first shows of this year. And this is with James Layfield at ClearFind. And what their product does is it actually helps you analyze all the software that your company owns and uses and see how you can sort of narrow that down and break it into what's absolutely necessary and take full advantage of what you've got. So is that what you're doing? Do you do some analysis of what the needs are and what you've got, what you can utilize better, but specifically for the cloud rather than software products?
Kim, that's exactly right. It starts first with visibility. Most organizations, it's in the security world, it's an adage, right? You can't protect what you don't know that you have, right? In the cloud, it's very similar, right? When you start talking about scale, 20, 30,000 users that have, thousands of accounts and resources that are just spread across larger enterprises. And again, and this is a problem even in small organizations that's present too. But you have to have a way of visualizing, how that looks in your organization, how you map it to your different business units and functions, and you can see and report at those different levels. That's kind of one of the first things that as a product, Kion does is help you kind of model your organization. Then from there, what we also help is really applying the right rules. We call them cloud rules in our product, but the right rules that govern what should happen in parts of the organization. And some of that's really based on where a project lives. Some of it's based on the type of project, right? The type of account. Is it a dev account versus a production account? Some of it's based on other factors, right? Who's funding this account? Is it from internal funding or external funding? And that taxonomy is so important because each of those drive different rules and each of those drive different behaviors that you want to make sure happens, right? So as an example, one of the biggest challenges that still exists in the cloud is overspending. I think now the last stat I saw the other day was $180 billion in 2021 was spent in the cloud, right? Which is an insane amount of money, right? And you've got organizations that in a lot of cases don't understand where their money is going. So having the ways that you can control that spend, maybe limit in lower environments, say sandbox and dev environments, when a developer or engineer hits a certain threshold, versus in production, you probably don't want to shut things down, right? So having that taxonomy is just so important, and being able to visualize that and then make decisions as a business off of that is extremely important.
It's fascinating, I think, the how this has evolved to where we are, right? If you look back before the cloud, everyone had on-prem capability, or you had a data center that you co-located. So anything you did was tied to some physical box with software. And the problem with that is maintaining and updating that was very manually intensive and very costly, not to mention the amount of space, real estate space, that these racks and things like that took on. So the cloud promised more agility, more flexibility, one place. But what I'm hearing is that didn't exactly happen. Now you have multi-cloud environments, and you still have to figure out, how do I now manage this and get it under control? Is Kion the vehicle to enable that? Is that the oversimplistic approach, or to the issue that you're solving?
Tulio, I'm going to have you come in and do sales pitches for me from now on. No, great. No, it's a great analogy, but no, you're exactly right. And I think I'll go back to an example. One of our very early customers came to us, and they were like, "I don't want organization XYZ's version of the cloud. I want AWS or I want Azure." And we kind of had to unpack that. We had to understand, well, what does that mean, right? And it really related to the control and just autonomy that people have in the cloud. And I think rarely in enterprises, do we think about the user experience of what that really looks like. So in that example, right, what was happening was it was taking from a engineer requesting a cloud account to when the account got provisioned upwards of 8 weeks because of a security process that had to be followed from one team to the next team, right? That engineer can go home, swipe a credit card in 2 seconds, get an AWS account, and go and do their work, right? And so when they start talking about what that experience means, right, and given especially today's hiring climate, where the last thing you want to do as an organization is slow down the innovation progress and just the drive that people have in your organization. It is so important to be able to have that right level of experience to deliver the promise of the cloud, but deliver the promise of the cloud in the enterprise with the controls that are required there.
Very cool. So where are you getting adoption? Can you give us some use cases of how, like, it's the perfect fit? Is there a particular vertical or size of company or use case that others who might be listening say, hey, that would work for me? What are those use cases, if you could?
Yeah, no, happy to. So I'd say today we primarily, work across, I'll say 4 different main verticals. So one of which is, I mentioned, when we started out as a services company, we had a lot of business in the federal government. We still do a ton of business there, and understanding there's some nuances in the way the government has to procure cloud as well as just control cloud in general. It's still a core area of our business across, defense, intelligence, civilian, healthcare, across that gambit in the government sector. We also work with a lot of commercial, enterprises that I'd say are, technology led and enabled. On our website, We have a few different case studies that are out there. One is with Indeed, the job hosting site that probably many people are familiar with, whether you've searched for a job or you've gone there to, perhaps use it to find candidates, right? And while their business is certainly around trying to find the right candidate for the right company, at the end of the day, it's all tech enabled. It's some of the most, just some of the best customers that we've worked with that think about how they usually drive tech innovation. And the customer there, wanted this experience where the day that an engineer starts, they get a laptop and they get a cloud account, a sandbox account, for them to start innovating and experiencing what that's like. But in their environment, it wasn't 8 weeks. It was a period of time where it took them to get those cloud accounts provisioned. And so what we kind of came in was helping to show how all these pieces start to come together. When you have the right financial management controls, when you have the right security and compliance and the right automation, that we made it so literally now they use a tool like Jira or ServiceNow in terms of workflow. So they go ahead and request a new cloud account. They have different sizes of those accounts that they choose based on budget and purpose. And once that gets approved, literally the tool then calls over into Kion. We provision the resource and set that up, consistently. I'd say, again, outside of the commercial enterprises, the other kind of two areas that we work a lot with is in higher education. So universities that are looking to get cloud in the hands of as many students as possible. And then lastly, we do a lot of work in the tech kind of SaaS startup business as well. We actually just earlier this week published a case study with one of our customers, NCamp, that we started working with a little less than a year ago. And, in that space, innovation is key, right? You don't want to let off the gas, right? And do you really want your resources to be spent managing your cloud or building your core product and service? And so we were able to really help them save a lot of time, set up some of the best practices, and really just make sure that as they grow, they have a foundation in place that's going to help them scale.
Very cool. So thank you for saving some dollars there by making, the government cloud a bit more efficient. But let's talk a little bit about other ways of disrupting. So you mentioned the need for company culture, inefficiencies, and just getting people set up, right? How else is Kion disrupting this industry or helping companies to enable faster?
Yeah, so I mentioned, one of the other pillars we haven't talked a lot about is really around security and compliance. And I don't care whether you are early stage startup or you're, a large enterprise, right? There's chances are some level of compliance that you've got to adhere to, whether it's in the federal space, things like FedRAMP or CMMC as a regulation, to on the commercial or healthcare side, HIPAA, PCI, et cetera. And the reality is that when organizations are moving to the cloud, that's yet another layer that they have to think about, right? So one of the things that we offer with our product is out of the box 4,000 checks and counting of being able to help map security controls and automation for different compliance standards, and where we help you not just implement the technical controls in place, we actually also come behind that and offer a security controls matrix that lets you see exactly how those controls are implemented, what's satisfied, kind of in almost in a layer cake model where the cloud provider offers, a certain baseline. Then on top of that, the configuration of your different accounts and resources offer that. Kion as a platform helps to satisfy another level of controls. And then hopefully at the end, you're really worrying about maybe 10% or less of controls that you have to satisfy. So that speed of not having to go through an exhaustive set of activities when it comes to preparing for an audit, or in some cases, even if it's remediating that, we find is extremely beneficial in an area that we think that we're kind of really helping to stand above the crowd and really helping organizations move faster.
So, Brian, keeping the sort of finger on the pulse of how cloud is evolving in recent years, obviously you're in this space every day and you're seeing the trajectory of where things could be going. What's happening next, in your opinion? where are we heading? What's sort of the next frontier that would solve some of the challenges that many businesses face today, alongside with what you're doing? Where do you potentially see the cloud space heading?
So I definitely think that what we're starting to see, and again, certain cloud providers have done better at this than others, is really leveraging higher level managed services that can really accelerate development, right? And so I think if you notice, while certainly you go to an AWS reInvent conference in Las Vegas at the end of the year, and you'll hear a lot about, the next generation compute or storage and things like that. But you hear a lot more about here's new managed services that offer capabilities around, let's just say, Amazon Recognition when it was launched a few years back around face recognition, right? It's a managed service that, you don't have to figure out how you integrate that in your application. Instead, you're just making some API calls into a service and then paying based on the volume of what you're doing. Those I'd say are that where we're kind of getting to, right? Where a lot of organizations are looking at choosing the right cloud services, not providers, but services that help them build the best possible application, and offer, hopefully, in record time, those capabilities to their end customers, and really just help them lead forward, versus going through very lengthy dev cycles. I mean, I still think we have a long way to go. There's still a ton of applications that are not quote cloud ready. They haven't been thought about and re-engineered to take advantage of scalability and elasticity. But we're well on our way, and fast, rewinding a few years back, you still heard people saying, I don't trust the public cloud. How can I trust my sensitive data with inside of a public cloud? It's been a while since I've heard that from CIOs, CISOs. Now it's really around, how do I make sure that I'm avoiding risk inside of my public cloud? How can I lock configurations down? How can I control spending? How can I give my finance team a little bit of control back? So that's where I would just see more evolution happening, especially in the near term, and then longer term as well.
Okay, so I'm listening here, and I can't help but wonder. And we recently had a guest that was talking about private LTE 5G networks because of the decentralization that has happened, where you can get county level spectrum, right? And so I'm thinking to myself, the major and 5G is changing drastically how we use mobility and the kind of speed and access we have through mobile devices because of 5G. Are the large wireless carriers missing an opportunity by not getting into the cloud space? I mean, could they eventually get to a place where things are more mobile, things are more decentralized, and they could provide cloud solutions that are mobile enabled? Is that an opportunity that they're missing? Is there something that could happen eventually where there's more solutions that are localized on the edge, if you will, that are enabled by mobile technologies like 5G? Is there something going on there that they ought to be looking at?
Yeah, no, and Tulio, I think that there are a lot of things that are already kind of happening at that's kind of level, right? Where there are services that even again the top cloud providers, AWS, Microsoft, and Google, are offering out to the edge, right? Whether it's Outpost in AWS or others that are available that organizations can kind of leverage. I would say for us, a lot of the telco, kind of providers and folks that we talk to, are using, whether it is, bringing that data back and just being able to have, better access to, for end users that are accessing, their environments from wherever, whenever, really leveraging the power of the cloud versus trying to go out and build things themselves. So I definitely think that we're seeing more and more of that across, many industry segments, not just in 5G, but just across, places that have been a little bit, I would say, laggard, in terms of cloud adoption, and really seeing more of that now.
Interesting. Thank you.
Yeah, let's take it back. We're coming to the final minutes of today's show. but I want to bring it back to the title, and this is the word embrace. It's difficult for a lot of people, myself included, right, to let go and not have control and really accept that I or our company or we did not have to do this all ourselves. So what advice would you have for people who might be struggling with that? That it doesn't all have to be in-house. There are, software and services that can really help you be the best version of you. What does it take to accept that?
Yeah, I think it's, again, I go back to the balance concept, right? You want to be able to make sure that you've built whether you call it a governance model or just the approach that you take to how you kind of control cloud in a way that gives a level of flexibility, right? When an organization, kind of starts this journey, you know, they go in one of two directions, right? It's wild, wild west, or it's, here is a very controlled, usually non-agile approach. And either way, one of the keys that really comes down to making, that work and embracing the cloud is this concept of delegation, right? Go back to one of the topics at the very beginning. You can't possibly scale, your people at the same pace that you can scale your infrastructure and your applications. And so you have to figure out a way that, your engineers get empowered with the context they need to make decisions, right? The finance team isn't approving every time that you spin up an EC2 instance in AWS. Instead, the engineer and the developer needs to know exactly, first off, training about what to do. Second, when they go and have options, they're choosing perhaps the most cost-effective option. And third, like when it comes down to, they've been running stuff for a while, they can clearly see every day what that looks like. Is there an opportunity to optimize cost by decommissioning resources or right-sizing resources? From a compliance perspective, is there, findings that they can take care of, right? It doesn't have to be the security team knocking on their door saying, hey, Bob, you need to, shut this off or change this or update this, right? Really embracing that decentralized model is super key to that, because your cloud operations team or your cloud center of excellence or cloud PMO, whatever you call it, that's in charge of that inside your organization, will never be able to keep up with the demand that exists. But your people, if you empower them right, can help you along that way. And again, that's, I think, just one of the keys to success there.
So with this, we always like to kind of end the show talking about company culture. At Kion, how do you go about empowering your people? So you mentioned the training, the know-how, and the care that requires. Like it's important to me that I help, my company be efficient, save money, etc. So how do you go about empowering people? What does that look like for you?
No, well, so again, it goes back to people, right? You can't build a great company with just okay people, and you have to invest in people along the way. So it's one of the things I will say that I think we've done a really good job at from the very beginning. Everything from, how we defined our purpose, our mission, our vision, our values. When we first started the company with, I mentioned 6 people, we sat around a table and we decided, okay, from a values perspective, what do we want this to be? What do we want people to know about, right? Us. And our number one value is turning customers into fans. You have to create a customer-centric culture inside your organization, right? They matter, right? In so many ways, it helps us innovate with what needs to happen in our product. It helps a number of just different ways. And then, the other piece is, obviously taking care of folks, right? Building a team and a culture where you've got individuals that are empowered in their different roles, whether it's in engineering or delivery or sales, like that they can bring things up, they can work collaboratively together. It's just critically important to do that as a startup. And again, in my role, I always look at it, if I'm the smartest guy in the room, I've done something wrong. I want to surround myself with people that are thinking in different ways than I am, and helping to extend some of the foundation that we've built in brand new ways. And, again, I think when you do it right, again, great people attract even greater people, and your organization just benefits from that along the way.
I love that. I love that quote. Thank you for your humility, and I'm 1,000% sure that your team appreciates it as well.
Well, Brian, we're up on time. There, we can keep going and we can learn a lot more. But we appreciate the time you've shared with us. We wish you a lot of continued success. So it seems as though there are some tools and some platforms and solutions to get your cloud environment under control. So come check out Kion and see how they can help you. So stay with us as we get off the air in just a second. Brian, Kim, what have we got coming up the rest of the week? I think we have one more show tomorrow, right?
Sure. We only have one show coming up this week because Thursday will be our monthly all hands. So for tomorrow, we're going to be speaking with Jared Kessler, CEO at Easy Knock, talking about innovation and data utilization in prop tech, how technology companies can weaponize public information in the housing industry to innovate. So very interesting and enticing topic there tomorrow. That's 12 o'clock Pacific right here on Dojo Live. Thank you, Brian, again for joining us today, and stay safe, everyone.
Kim and Tulio, thanks for having me.
Bye for now.